are united in diversity. We are very heterogeneous in our opinion.
We are doing this in our open democracies, discussing this all open and loud, and I'm not for that.
What is European Union? What is freedom? How we learn together.
The obvious question is, what is the EU doing? What is our plan?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you and welcome back to our show here at the Energy and Climate Forum. My name is Matthew Welfel. I'm the Executive Director at Politico, and I am joined on stage by Parine Buhana, Director at GlobeScan, and Tom Howes, Advisor to Director Lukasz Kolinsky at DG Energy. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you, Matthew. Hi, everyone.
So in case you haven't already picked one up, we're going to dive into a report that we got a sneak peek at that was commissioned by Dajin Offshore, who's the presenting sponsor of our event today. If you haven't already grabbed it, again, you can download it at that QR code or pick one up. But I want to get into it because the clock is already ticking. And Parine, you did the research, which I'll just note in today's age can't be replicated by AI. What are the takeaways for the audience?
Thank you, and I'll try and be concise, looking at the clock right there. Yeah. So what we did is we went out and interviewed key industry players across Europe. These represent about 85% of installed and planned offshore wind power across the region, and we wanted to get their perspectives on the challenges that they face and their perspectives when it comes to meeting Europe's ambitions when it comes to offshore wind. And essentially we found 4 things, and I'll be very brief. One is that they are not very confident, that's least to say, that these targets that we've set years ago are going to be met in time at pace and scale that is required. Why is that? One of the biggest constraint that they're facing is cost inflation that we've heard many times again and again in our interviews, and that really is the interlinking kind of challenge that's affecting all of their projects, and in particular the very business case at the center of all these developments. When we tested some of the latest trade and industrial policies that are being worked on right now in the EU, we got some very nuanced responses. Yes, some, and we've heard about it this morning, cybersecurity requirements in particular, they're seen as having a positive impact on the development of these offshore wind activities because, you know, people in the industry, the key industry players understand the importance of that in the current security context. However, when we look at trade defense measures and import tariffs, there, industry players are a lot more concerned about the potential negative impact this could have on affordability and on delivery pressures. And so what they're calling for, and I'll close there, hopefully right on time, they're calling for 2 things. One is to keep those global supply chains effective and access to non-EU suppliers when there is not enough local capacity. And second, they're asking for faster permitting processes, better access to financing, and clear and very kind of effective conditions for execution on the ground.
So I just wanted to follow up because you mentioned 2 things that we're going to get into, and Tom, I'm going to come to you next. But I mean, the report covers 85% of Europe's capacity, and confidence is declining. Like, how striking is that? How concerning is that for you when you hear numbers like that?
It is. Only 7% of the people we interviewed said they were completely confident about meeting those targets. So that gives you a sense of how concerned the industry is about its ability to move it at pace. And it's not a matter of ambition. The industry still is very much behind those goals, but the system in which they operate and the delivery pressures they are under makes it incredibly difficult. We're talking about ever larger, complex projects that are further offshore, and so when you think of cost inflation, this has ripple effects throughout everything else that they're looking at, and in particular, high capex projects, it's hard for them to get them off the ground in the current conditions we're in.
So, Tom, speaking for the Commission, you're here on stage, which means I assume you're going to solve all of our problems. You're ready to do that. Parine just outlined those. You've got all the answers, right?
We do that every day of the week.
Sounds great. Well, then, with that, I mean, what do you make of that gap between the ambition that Perrine just mentioned and the lack of confidence, and how do we get there, or how do we address that?
Well, I think we really welcome the report because it's good that that awareness is spread across the board. There's a lot that's changed in the last 5 years. I mean, yes, in particular in energy, whether you're talking of COVID and the disruption of supply chains, the cybersecurity risks that are new that you flagged, and the impact of huge supply shocks. There's a lot to disrupt and concern and raise risks. But we feel that it's good that they're all being identified. Okay, inflation risk, that's general. The permitting risk, we've been improving permitting regimes across Europe for the last 10 years. Financing risk, has been talking about novel financing arrangements and throwing literally billions into it to help bring in finance and attract the investment. So it's good the awareness is there. We want to carry on working with industry, using the tool. We think we have the tools there that will address all of these concerns, but need to work together with the industry to make them work, implement them, and accelerate the growth in offshore.
I want to just zoom in on again, and dive into the numbers and frame this gap. Because right now, Europe has about between 35 and 40 gigawatts of offshore installed, and their target by 2030 is about 142, as the report lays out. Like, what gives you the confidence that Europe can stay on track and meet a very ambitious goal in terms of scaling up?
Partly because the drive with member states to accelerate the rollout of renewables is growing stronger every day. Every increase in the price of fossil fuels is another reason to be rolling out the renewables.
Yep.
Also, it's not going to be a linear approach. Things happen step by step. And we've had, for instance, the Berlin conference earlier this year, where there was widespread agreement on a lot of the complicated administrative and regulatory regimes that need to be solved for rolling out offshore, the joint management of grids, interconnections offshore. The Bornholm Island, for instance, is a great case where we think we've aired a lot of the issues and making progress in solving that, which will make other such projects faster to roll out.
So, what I'm hearing from both of you, that this is not necessarily a technology challenge. It might be a little bit of a financial challenge. It's primarily a policy challenge, and there are things like permitting and inflation and the supply chain. I mean, which of those do you think needs to be addressed first? And I guess maybe to gut check myself, like, do you agree that it's a policy challenge, or is it maybe more of an execution challenge that needs to be solved? Perrine, and I'll start with you. We give Tom a break after those last two.
After speaking with all those key players that are right there on the ground, actually, right there offshore, they really are looking at this in a very pragmatic way, and they're looking at policies through the lens of affordability and delivery. And when they see that policy might make it even more difficult for them to get projects off the ground, then they want to look at those again. Yet they're not looking at one in the same. They're still able to differentiate what works and what might not work. For example, CBAM is viewed in a way that's fairly nuanced and mixed, and people agree with the principle of the mechanism. It's conditional to how it's been implemented, but then they become a lot more skeptic when we talk about import tariffs or trade defense measures.
Is there anything, I mean, Tom, from your perspective, that Europe can or should do to accelerate delivery while keeping these projects economically viable?
Absolutely. I mean, the logic of the resurgence in European industrial policy that brought forward the IAA, the Industrial Accelerator Act, is all about addressing the weaknesses in resilience that we've uncovered over the last few years. Disruptions, whether it's COVID or something else, to our supply chains. Yes, we want as supplies to be as affordable as possible, but if those supply chains are risky, and we've underestimated those risks in the past, then we do need to onshore stuff. So we've now created the framework where that can be done. There are safeguard clauses there in case there are hiccups. We do not want to disrupt supply. We don't want to constrain competition to the point that we're increasing costs even more. So there are safeguards there to catch that. But fundamentally, if we can bring more manufacturing onshore, that will help the development of the projects.
Okay. Shifting from manufacturing, although I do want to get into the supply chain. I mean, permitting delays were something that we've touched on. The grids package is in the works. Seems like it's moving quickly. Tom, I don't know if you want to break any news around when we can expect that.
I think the Council's hoping for an agreement before the summer, Parliament shortly after. and a common agreement in the early autumn is our hope still.
I was really hoping for a specific date, but that'll work.
This is Brussels.
But what is in that package, or what could we look forward to that's going to help with some of the permitting delays that the report talks about?
Oof, lots of good things in the package. It's almost Christmas, but it will come before Christmas.
We've got just a few minutes, but yeah.
Yeah, on the permitting side, we think we've done some really good legislative reform on the renewables front, where we've either the acceleration areas, the one-stop shops, the projects of overwhelming economic interest. These are concepts that we've rolled out in renewables, which we think could be more broadly rolled out in infrastructure in particular. The idea of digitalizing permitting processes to speed all of that up. These are going to speed up times and reduce uncertainty, which has a direct impact on project costs and construction costs. So those are good things on the permitting front. On the planning front, this was mentioned already earlier this morning, seems a bit more controversial in Council, but we've been trying to reassure member states that there's no way anyone can do anything without TSOs being involved, without NSOE being involved. We are not taking a big grab for power. We are improving the European dimension to infrastructure planning because it's been suboptimal in the last few years. Now that we're trying to integrate all the different energy fuels, the hydrogen, the gas, the biogas, and the electricity in our planning regimes, see how all of those fit together, bring in the transmission side, the distribution side, and the smart grid and the digitalization. There are many more moving parts to grids these days that need to be coherently mapped out, and we think we can help do that.
Well, so exactly on that point, I mean, these are inherently global supply chain. I mean, these projects are cross-border by definition as offshore, and there's this, I mean, the debate has shifted very quickly from competitiveness to resilience. You have European companies like RWE and Ørsted and Siemens that are building these turbines, but they need and rely on partners like Dajin, who are global to build the foundations. I mean, how do you balance some of how do you maintain those global supply networks while also making sure that you take some of the steps that you were just talking about? And Parine, I actually want to put that back to you just again to go back and forth.
Yeah, well, what we heard in the interviews again is, non-EU suppliers. We did ask a series of questions to try and understand how the key industry players view non-EU suppliers versus EU-based suppliers. And there's clearly a role for both, but non-EU suppliers, like the Chinese suppliers, are seen to be much outperforming their EU peers when it comes to delivering at scale. And we're talking here about large, ever more complex projects at price competitiveness and at project risk sharing. And these are incredibly important to the professionals right there on the ground. So that's why they ultimately, at the end of the interviews, when we had talked at length about the landscape and the issues and challenges they were facing, we were asking them a very simple question. If you were to meet a policymaker in Brussels, what would you ask? And the number one kind of request was to keep those global supply chains effective and access there. And
that's because those suppliers, I mean, at the end of the day, they're focused on just getting things built, right? And they're saying, like, that is the most successful, or that's what we need in order to do this. We're starting to run out of time, but if we look back, if we're sitting here in 2030, and again, Europe has this goal of 142 gigawatts by 2030 of offshore capacity. What have we done that will make us successful as a continent? Like, how do we hit that target?
Well, do you want to go first?
Well, I'd start by implementing all the European legislation that's on the books that hasn't been implemented.
Do everything that you say.
Absolutely, okay. That'll do it.
Yeah, we've heard it today. It's no longer time for setting targets, but actually getting the work done. We've heard it this morning, so I think you've laid out some of the key issues you're talking about at the Commission, so that's clearly what the industry seems to be expecting.
And then I guess we'll just wrap up with one for each of you. I mean, again, this is a daunting task. Confidence, according to this report, is falling short of ambition. I mean, what leaves you optimistic that we're going to get there and do all the things that Tom has laid out, or what makes you optimistic that, again, we're going to get to those targets?
I think we're at a confluence now at times where we have certainly lots of geopolitical developments that make it such a window of opportunity to push both for the climate agenda and the security agenda with this electrification priority and imperative that you are working on. So certainly I'm feeling optimistic about it all because the time is right. It does feel like.
For us, I think the direction of travel is clear. We think that a good, clear legislative base that's transparent for everybody. There's a new MFF coming, so there'll be more European money dedicated to this, as well as the clearer policy framework.
All right, we'll see just how much. We didn't even get into energy security, but we're over time. I do say, please stay seated. My colleague Zia is up next with a conversation on Europe's climate adaptation plans, which, as an American, I'm hoping uses more offshore wind to pay or to deliver air conditioning. But thank you both for being here. Thank you to Dajin for making this event possible. Please join me in thanking our participants.
Thank you.
Thank you.